Okay, let's talk about Washington's presidency. This is kind of,
He sets the precedents for presidents.
so George Washington takes the oath of office in New York City in April of 1789. He is our only unanimously elected president by the first electoral college. John Adams becomes his vice president, and
This is going to, under the rules, each elector casts two votes, one for president and one, well, not necessarily one for vice president, but whoever comes in second. So one of the votes has to be thrown out, otherwise it ends up being.
we'll have a problem with that down the road. We'll talk about that. So this is the electoral vote, and territories, Northwest territories, are not going to be elected.
North Carolina and Rhode Island had not yet ratified the Constitution, so they didn't get to vote, but all the rest of the states did. Notice New York didn't. They just were behind the time. They would have voted for Washington too.
So the first cabinet is going to be four guys. This was the cabinet of President Obama with his vice president. You can see it has grown significantly since the four that they had at the original. So these are your four members of Washington's cabinet. Thomas Jefferson is Secretary of State, Alexander Hamilton, Secretary of Treasury, Henry Knox, famous Revolutionary War soldier, Secretary of War, and Edmund Randolph will be the Attorney General. Two Virginians and two Northerners, New York and Massachusetts. So he wanted a diverse. Okay, so we've talked about this separation of powers,
Legislative, executive, and judicial. And the executive, is basically going to enforce the laws. He can veto legislation. He can appoint federal officials. And basically, he's kind of setting it up for what exactly is a president supposed to do.
Okay, remember the fears of the Federalist and the Democratic Republicans. They wanted a strong central government. They worried about mob rule. They wanted a loose construction of the Constitution. This is going to be a big deal. Government involved in economy, yes. National bank, yes. Protective tariff, yes. Federal assumption of state war debts. This is something they're going to fight about, yes. They want commerce and industry, and they are pro-English. So you can see on the other side, which are the Jeffersonians, the Democratic Republicans. They're more about states' rights.
They worry about tyranny, strict construction of the Constitution. No, 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 no on the next four. A rural base of farmers, and they are more towards France. So give you time to fill this.
This is from Jefferson, and he says, "Those who labor in the earth are the chosen people of God, if ever he had chosen people,
whose breasts he has made his peculiar deposit for substantial and genuine virtue. It is the focus in which he keeps alive that sacred fire which otherwise might escape from the face of the earth." He is pro-farmer.
Does not want an industrial society.
So the Jeffersonian economic model is we provide the raw materials and send them over to the industrial nations and then purchase those back from the industrial nations, keeping us from that nastiness of the dirty, overcrowded factories and cities. So that's the Jeffersonian model. He wanted free trade between the U.S. and Europe, and he did not want to see
Lincoln, clear across the river for Jefferson. He is a little apart from the rest of Washington, what they are believing in. Jefferson is the outsider. Okay, you've got
all of these other monuments here, Washington, Lincoln, and then clear over across the Tidal Basin is Thomas Jefferson.
So Hamilton is got
his Economize as Secretary of Treasury, he has 3 goals. First, establish public credit, a national bank, and domestic manufacturing. So you can see it's very different from what Jefferson is looking for as a vision for.
So we've got conflict, okay? And conflict is
Still going on in government today.
I don't even know why I have that.
Okay, so Hamilton makes a report about public credit. He says, okay, first of all, we got to take care of our soldiers. And a lot of them were holding IOUs. And what they had done was they needed money, and so some of them had sold their IOUs to folks just to get any kind of money whatsoever. So they might have had like an IOU from the government for $100, and they'd sell it in case, and just to get money to these speculators, $100 for maybe $25. And these speculators were betting on the government. So they're holding these IOUs that the soldiers had previously had. And Hamilton is aware of this, but he says it's still an IOU and we still need to do it. Okay, and they're arguing, but these soldiers got cheated. And he's saying, yeah, but they're big boys. They should have known that when they sold, and we need to pay at face value whatever these guys are holding. So that's his first thing. We've got to pay. If we are a viable nation, we've got to realize that our debts need.
Okay, so Hamilton says let's pay him at face value, and he has some detractors. He's going to get his way there.
And the speculators made a good deal, and they are gonna be paid.
Okay,
So this actually infuriates Jefferson and Madison, and
happy with him. Now he wants this national bank, and he wants to pay off state debts
and have the federal government assume these debts. Madison and Jefferson are opposed to this, and Jefferson arranges a dinner. Now the only ones there are Hamilton, Jefferson, and Madison.
Ah, Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Burr, sir.
And did you hear the news about good old General Mercer?
No.
You know Claremont Street?
Yeah.
They renamed it after him. The Mercer legacy is secure.
Sure.
And all he had to do was die.
Yeah, that's a lot less work.
We ought to give it a try. Now, how you gonna get your debt plan through?
I guess I'm gonna finally have to listen to you.
Really?
Talk less, smile more. Do whatever it takes to get my plan on the Congress floor.
Now Madison and Jefferson are merciless.
Well, hate the sin, love the sinner.
Hamilton.
I'm sorry, Burr, I gotta go.
But
Decisions are happening over dinner.
two Virginians and an immigrant walk into a room diametrically opposed foes. They emerge with a compromise, having opened doors that were previously closed. Bros. The immigrant emerges with unprecedented financial power, a system he can shape however he wants. The Virginians emerge with the nation's capital. And here's the pièce de résistance. No one else was in the room where it happened, the room where it happened, the room where it happened. No one else was in the room where it happened, the room where it happened, the room where it happened. No one really knows how the game is played, the art of the trade, how the sausage gets made. We just assume that it happens, but no one else is in the room where it happens. Thomas claims
Alexander was on Washington's doorstep one day in distress and disarray.
Thomas claims
Alexander said,
I've nowhere else to turn.
and basically begged me to join the fray.
Thomas claims
I approached Madison and said, I know you hate him, but let's hear what he has to say.
Thomas claims
Well, I arranged the meeting. I arranged the menu, the venue, the seating.
But no one else was in the room where it happened, the room where it happened, the room where it happened. No one else was in the room where it happened, the room where it happened, the room where it happened. No one really knows how the parties get to yes. The pieces that are sacrificed in every game of chess. We just assume that it happens, but no one else is in the room where it happens. Meanwhile, Madison is grappling with the fact that not every issue can be settled by committee. Meanwhile, Congress is fighting over where to put the Capitol. It isn't pretty. Then Jefferson approaches with the dinner and invite, and Madison responds with Virginian insight.
Maybe we can solve one problem with another and win a victory for the Southerners. In other words,
ho.
a quid pro quo.
I suppose.
Wouldn't you like to work a little closer to home?
Actually, I would.
Well, I propose the Potomac.
And you'll provide him his votes.
Well, we'll see how it goes.
Let's go.
No.
What else was in the room where it happened? The room where it happened. The room where it happened. No one else was in the room where it happened. The room where it happened. The room where it happened.
My God, and
Got to trust, but we never really know what got discussed. Click, boom, and it happened.
and no one else is in the room where it happened.
Alexander Hamilton.
What did they say to you to get you to sail New York City down the river?
Alexander Hamilton.
Did Washington know about the dinner? Was there presidential pressure to deliver?
Alexander Hamilton.
Or did you know even then it doesn't matter where you put the U.S. Capitol?
Cause we'll have the banks, we're in the same spot.
You got more than you gave.
And I wanted what I got. When you got skin in the game, you stay in the game. But you don't get a win unless you play in the game. Oh, you get love for it, you get hate for it, you get nothing if you wait for it, wait for it, wait. God help and forgive me, I wanna build something that's gonna outlive me. What do you want, Bert? What do you want, Bert? If you stand for nothing, Bert, what do you fall for?
I wanna be in the room where it happens, the room where it happens. I wanna be in the room where it happens, the room where it happens. I wanna be in the room where it happens. I wanna be in the room where it happens, the room where it happens. I wanna be in the room where it happens, the room where it happens. I wanna be in it. I've got to be in the room where it happens, that big old room.
The art of the compromise.
Hold your nose and close your eyes.
We want our leaders to save the day.
We don't get a say in what they trade away.
We dream of a brand new start.
But we dream in the dark for the most part. Dark as a tomb where it happens. I've got to be in the room where it happens. I've got to be
Where it happens.
I've got to be
Where it happens.
I've got to be in the room
Where it happens.
I gotta be
Where it happens. I wanna be in the room where it happens.
Click, boom.
So, he's going to get his national bank. He's going to get his deal to pay off the state debts or assumed state debts at effect.
And the way he does this was he interprets the Constitution and the elastic cause, which says that you get to do things if it is necessary. The Congress shall have the power to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the enumerated powers. Okay, so that's Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18, and it's known as the elastic cause of the Constitution.
Jefferson, strict construction of the Constitution. Hamilton basically says, hey, if something is not immoral, if something is necessary, we should be able to do it. Jefferson says, the Constitution says, not convenient, only necessary. And what you're wanting to do is convenient, not necessary. So here you got the two members of the cabinet squash this interpretation. As it turns out, Hamilton wins. He gets his national bank. They give it a 20-year charter, and Jefferson loses this argument.
Okay, so they make a what they call the botanizing, and the botanizing tour was Jefferson and Madison, and
The speculation was that they were organizing a second party, that they were organizing an opposition to Hamilton and actually to Washington. However, they really just kind of went on a trip. And when they went on this trip, they made notes about agriculture that was going on, infrastructure that was needed. So it could be that it was nothing more than an innocent trip. So this is disputed territory. We remember this had been part of Massachusetts. They're going to redraw this, and they're going to make this into Maine. The North Carolina, this is all disputed territory. So all of this is going to be kind of negotiated over. What is the correct territory? What works here? In the meantime, you're going to get Jefferson, Madison, and Burr kind of colluding together against the Federalist ideas. Okay, so then Hamilton makes another report on manufacturers, and he proposes a protective tariff. And that is going to bring money in to the federal government. Once again, Jefferson is going to be against this protective tariff. He's going to win. Jefferson's going to fail. Okay? I'm sorry. The subsidies are going to fail, but the protective tariff wins. No subsidies for industry at this particular time. Okay, so now we have the second election, and Washington again wins 100% of the electoral votes. And basically, where is this? This is going to be, so this is going to be whiskey distillers in Western Pennsylvania, and the excise tax that had been levied upon them, they got very, very angry, did not want to pay it. So when tax collectors came by, they had a rebellion. There were like 500 of these folks that were making money from the whiskey, domestic production of whiskey, and refused to pay the taxes, actually attacked. Now, Washington's got a decision to make. Washington has to decide, do I respond to this, or what do I do? And he responded. He said, this is a federal tax, and you cannot have a rebellion. We have to put this down. He actually took the lead, led 13,000 troops that they were militia put together, and although they never engaged because the Pennsylvania folks backed down, they did establish that the federal government did have the right to try and enforce the. So be aware of the big distillers had to pay a flat rate. The small distillers paid by the gallon. This was his tax, and that's going to be one of the first things when Jefferson becomes president that he does away with, is this excise tax. He thinks that this is tax. So you can go to this link, and Mr. Betts will better explain, perhaps, or in more full. So know that a progressive tax, that's the rich pay a higher percent than the poor. A flat tax, the rich pay the same amount as the poor. For instance, like when you go to the grocery store, if you're rich, you're going to pay the same amount for a gallon of milk and the same tax as a poor person. And a regressive tax, the rich actually have an advantage over the poor. So these are taxes that are, well, a flat tax. The poor are only kind of benefiting here with a progressive tax. Return by. So Washington's foreign policy. What's going on? The French Revolution. He has to make some decisions about that. We're having problems with trade. We're going to make decisions on that. And then what does he do after his second term? So all of So right as our revolution ends, the French Revolution begins. It's going to last for about 10 years, and it is much more bloody than revolution.
This is the tennis court oath. I'm not going to go into all the details of the French Revolution. Then, of course, at first, we're all for it. The French had been our allies. But then when it gets really bloody, we kind of are going to distance ourselves from it. Red, white, and blue. So Hamilton, he's thinking this is not a good thing. Jefferson, remember, he said, remember, a little blood needs to be shed whenever you have a revolution. So they send a representative named Citizen Genet. And Citizen Genet is trying to drum up support for the French Revolution. He lands in South Carolina, and that South Carolina was like a haven for pirates. And he is trying to get support for the French Revolution. He wants to meet with Washington. Washington actually does meet with Citizen Genet, but he says, listen, we are just not in a position to get involved with this. I know you helped us out, and we appreciate it. But we're a young country. We just do not have the means to help. And Citizen Genet does not well. Washington says we are neutral. There's a state of war in Europe, and the United States, with sincerity and good faith, adopt and pursue a conduct friendly and impartial towards all of the belligerent powers. Well, this is going to rub everybody the wrong way, the neutrality. It basically, though, is going to be our policy all the way up to, it says World War II, but we do get involved in World War I. So this is the legacy. FDR actually talks about we are not going to send troops into any foreign wars. However, we are going to. Okay, sometimes our presidents say things and they mean them at the time, but he sends John Jay, who's going to be our first justice, over to England to try and negotiate with them, try to get trade reestablished. And so basically they're stopping our ships at sea. This is not a good situation that we're in. Jay comes back and he has signed a treaty making England a most favored nation and reestablishing trade with England. They're supposed to abandon their forts. They don't. Ship owners are supposed to be compensated. They aren't. It is ratified, though, by the Senate 20-10. Pinckney's treaty, he is a little bit more successful. He's going to settle the boundary dispute in West Florida. Remember we were talking about this, the Natchez area, and he is going to establish free navigation of the Mississippi River and right of deposit with Spain. So Pinckney is a little bit more successful in his negotiations with the Spanish. Washington decides he is going to only serve 2 terms, and this sets a precedent for almost all future presidents. Franklin Roosevelt is going to be elected 4 times, although he doesn't serve his 4th term due to death. Okay, so the 22nd Amendment makes it mandatory that a president can only serve 2 terms in office. He is going to set the precedents for presidents, and George Washington, to this day, is always among the top.
Ding dong, it's learning. Hey guys, welcome to APUSH History and Washington's farewell address for dummies, and I'm not talking about you. But I am talking about U.S. history students. I'm talking about people that are out there on the internet that want to do weird learning, and I'm talking about you because you're watching me. So let's do it, guys. Washington's farewell address, like in 5 minutes. You got 5 minutes. Alright guys, so here it is, the bye-bye speech. We're going to use hand signals. It's really stupid, it's really easy, it is the basics and you can't go wrong. So first I want you to do this. See Washington, right? He's up on the pulpit there and he's giving his bye-bye speech and he's going blah, 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 no more than 2 terms. The concept's really simple, guys. I know today that everybody understands the president can't serve more than 2 terms. Duh. But that's the 22nd Amendment. Boy, that 2 thing really works out, doesn't it? So when Washington steps down at the end of his 2nd term, what he's really doing is he's cementing a 2-term rule in the unwritten Constitution. He's setting the tradition by stepping down and saying, I don't want to be a king. I can win another term, but I'm a gangster, and I'm a good gangster, and I'm going to step down. So after that, who is more gangster than OG George Washington? And the answer is nobody. Until we get to FDR. So number 1, no more than 2 terms until the 22nd Amendment. Giddy up, let's go. Do this, guys. Stay the hell away from Europe. What he specifically says is to stay out of permanent alliances. What Washington understands is if you start dancing with the European gods of war, you're going to get stomped on. Sometimes I call this the 98-pound weakling rule. The idea that if you're the 98-pound new kid on the block in a high school and you're a freshman, stay out of people's business. Don't go in the locker room and start being like, you mama ugly, because that's a bad idea. Just shut up, go to the weight room and work out. And what Washington is saying is the United States needs to work on itself and stay out of permanent alliances so we don't get our ass whooped. Isolationism, baby. Sorry, I cursed a little. Watch out. Watch out for the 2-party system is what I'm talking about. Sometimes I'll refer to Hamilton on one side. Sometimes I call him a blood, the Federalist Party. And then on this side in the cabinet, I also have Thomas Jefferson, a crypt, who's a Democratic Republican, former anti-Fed. So when I'm doing this, I'm kind of pointing to my cabinet as Washington saying, watch out for these dirty dogs. I know they love their country, but the fear is that if we develop a 2-party system, that we'll start to love our gang, I meant our party, more than our country. Sounds familiar. Washington is warning us against that development and to keep our eyes open. And I think that he's on the right track. Because down the road, we're going to see soon the Alien Sedition Act, the concept of nullification, and we're going to head choo-choo for the Civil War. So, there we go. Let's review really quick. I think I have my review notes down at my feet. Let me pick them up. So here we go, guys. You can do this. It's easy. Let's do it. No more than 2 terms. This is the unwritten rule set down by George Washington that lasts from 1796 all the way to 1945 when FDR dies, and then we write that sucker down, and how easy is that? It's the 22nd Amendment. The next one we do is we point over there across the Atlantic Ocean, and we say, stay the heck away from Europe. This is the idea of isolationism, right? That we need to work on ourselves, the 98-pound weakling rule. And number 3, watch out for the Bloods and the Crips. Hamilton and Jefferson, the Federalists and the Democratic Republicans, were warning Washington against the 2-party system really developing into something that's more self-interest driven than nationalistic and kind of, one nation driven. And I think that's enough learning for today. So ding dong, learning's done. Make sure you practice, guys, and get the farewell address down. And giddy up. I'll see you later.
All right, so